Y'all, can I tell you about these Tecovas boots? I don't know if y'all know this, but these boots are handmade, high quality, stylish, and comfortable right out of the box. I know we buy everything online these days, but boots are something you really should get fitted for. And it just so happens Tecovas is based right here in Austin. So come shop with me at the Tecovas store on South Congress or the Domain. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all. Today on CityCast Austin, these days it takes a lot to be a professional musician in this town. We often find ourselves having to work multiple jobs. Alex Marrero is a voice actor, music teacher, and has been a musician here for years. And he's an integral part of the city's Latin fusion music scene. And I'm talking to him today about how he does it all. This is the second of 5 episodes sponsored by Tecovas about the music community in Austin called Austin in Stereo. And one more thing, stick around after our interview with Alex for a segment called A Mile in Their Boots. This series shines a light on Austinites who help make our local community thrive. And today we'll be hearing from Sean Brannigan, a writer and performer at Esther's Follies. A Mile in Their Boots, just like this episode, is brought to you by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tecovas. It's Wednesday, August 28th. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, everyone. I am here with Alex Marrero, singer, songwriter, musician, best drummer in the game. You are everywhere. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Nikki. How are you?
I'm good. So, off top, how would you describe yourself as a musician?
I don't know. That's a tricky question. How does anyone describe themselves in any capacity, right? I guess I consider myself an eclectic musician, but I kind of consider myself a juggler more than anything. Not a literal juggler, but a metaphorical juggler, because I'm just constant. I have a lot of things in the air and I do a lot of different things. So yeah, I mean, I'm a musician, I'm a teacher, I'm a drummer, I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter. I just do a bunch of stuff. So I call myself kind of a juggler, which is a funny story, quick story. I was giving a drum lesson and I described myself as a juggler. Turns out my student was actually a professional juggler.
What?
What are the odds of that happening? He was like, oh, wow, really? I've been a juggler for 35 years. I'm like, oh, no, not literal juggler.
Okay. First of all, I need to understand and meet whoever has been juggling for 35 years.
Right.
Because I have tried to teach myself to juggle at least 7 times. So, okay, you just recently became host of a radio show called Horizontes, which I gotta say, it's just so good. I not that I even questioned whether it would be, but it's so good. Let's talk about why it's an important show to have on the airways here in Austin.
Well, Horizontes has existed for 50 years. It started 50 years ago when it was just KUT. I am the 4th host of that show, but the gentleman that hosted it for the last 35 years, Mr. Michael Crockett.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's a hugely important show because it showcases not just Brazilian and Latin music, but also the local music scene that a lot of times is underserved and underrepresented. Even though it's the live music capital of the world, things have changed. You see, there's a lot more acceptance or love for, different kinds of music that aren't what Austin was originally kind of known for, which was some country and some blues. There's been a lot of progress. There could always be more, but the show is important in that capacity. And I have to commend Michael Crockett because he has been exposing people for 35 years to music that is not in English, That's crazy. It's crazy and it's amazing. So it's a huge honor. Huge to have been asked to continue this torch, So yeah, it was a little daunting. It still is. I'm like 7 episodes in, something like that. But it's fun.
Feels like you're made for it, though. So I learned some things about you. Known each other a long time. But what I did not know is that your parents escaped Cuba in the 1960s
Hmm.
to Virginia, and then you were raised in Mexico City, which I did think I knew. But what were the musical sounds of your childhood? Like, what kind of music did you hear growing up? Because that is that's kind of a wild ride.
My parents are Cuban exiles, and that has informed every part of my life, clearly. So when they left Cuba in the early 60s, it was a different cultural and political climate in the United States. And, there was the threat of communism. They were escaping a dictatorship, a communist dictatorship. And most people end up in Miami. They didn't really end up in Miami. They ended up in Virginia by, all sorts of the fates. The fates put them there. And then they ended up in Mexico City, which is where I was born. So to answer your question, I grew up in a Cuban household. Spanish was the language in my home, 100%. So I heard a lot of Cuban music, old school Cuban music. And yeah, I even inherited my parents' record collection. I mean, you've been to my house, you've seen my LPs. I have all their old LPs that I would listen to when I was a little kid. So that between Cuban music and Mexican music just being in the environment, that's what I had around. And that's kind of what informed my childhood. And then, I got into rock and roll and heavy metal and, rebel against all the things that you just have around you, only to come back and discover them later. And here I am, the host of a Latin music show. You know what I mean?
Full circle.
Yeah, totally.
So evidently you were playing music in the clubs at 15?
Oh, yeah.
What kind of music were you playing in the clubs in Mexico when you were 15?
Heavy metal and rock.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a band. It's funny because I think about this because I ended up teaching rock camp for many years here at the school. And I remember thinking, wow, if I would have had this when I was 14, 15. But then I thought back and I was like, you know what? My boys and I, when we were 14, 15, we were resourceful and driven enough to put together a band. And we would rehearse every week, every Saturday. We would rehearse for 4 to 6 hours. We put out a demo. We would go play clubs. We were into it. So that was very formative. And I mean, it really informed a lot of my future existence.
To have that kind of tenacity and that kind of just drive at 14, 15, 16, I'll tell you what I was not doing when I was 15 years old.
But it was our escape. And we were teenagers and we were angry and we were in this big city that was very complicated and busy and it was just had this crazy energy and we were into it and we were dedicated musicians. That's part of the thing that I learned from heavy metal because the musicianship, whether you like the music or not, you can't deny the musicianship.
What first album was yours? Like something that you chose, you picked instead of just listening to your parents' music?
It was a Pat Benatar record.
Of course it was.
It was a Pat Benatar record. And I remember I saved up my allowance and I went to the store and I bought the LP and Pat Benatar. I don't remember the name of the album, but Pat Benatar is an amazing singer.
That's a solid choice. So you mentioned the full circle, right? You at some point you rebelled against Latin music and then came back to embrace it. What caused the change? Like, how did your musical style change to start encompassing everything? And when did you start to feel that happen?
When I left Mexico. Because what happens is with the stuff that you take for granted is no longer there. And then you get perspective. And then you come to a different country with different ideas and different everything. And you start to get homesick and you realize the things that connect to you on a soul level. And that goes back to your earliest memories and your earliest experiences. So that was when I was like, oh, there's a whole lot of stuff that, it was already in me, but I just wasn't that focused on.
Man, that's so real. I remember growing up and hearing, my family, my household was gospel, soul, funk, all that stuff. And I just remember I went through a phase in my teens where I was like, oh my God, if I hear one more sad Stevie Wonder song about being Black and loving life. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I can't handle it.
And now you can't get enough of them.
Now I can't get enough of it. So, some boy at school named Augie Rosales, I will never forget this kid. Augie Rosales handed me a tape that had Led Zeppelin on it. And I remember hearing Robert Plant for the first time, and I was like, what is this? And so then I went for years. All I listened to was classic rock and Robert Plant. And I became and then, of course, like you say, now I can't get enough of it. I just made a full circle back to sad Black people, or just like power to the people Black music.
Back to the blues.
Yeah, just like here we are. You became pretty well known while you were the lead singer of Brownout. Well, Brownout's project, Brown Sabbath. And I know that you even play for Ozzy Osbourne in Austin, which is severely cool. Honestly, you play for everybody. Like one of my favorite groups, Grupo Fantasma. You play for a lot of people. But tell me about Brown Sabbath.
It's like so many things. It was just totally random and out of the blue. I go way back with the Brownout guys to the Grupo days because I was in Grupo for a little while in the early 2000s. And they were doing a residency at a now defunct little club called Frank. Just to mix it up, they were doing 4 different shows in a month. And each week, they just grabbed a different theme. And one week was they did Brown Cesar, which was the Black Caesar James Brown album. Then another one was like Electric Boogaloo 2, just 4 different themes. And the last one they announced was Brown Sabbath, which was just something that they had thought of, silly stuff on the road. You're like, because there's a song, Brownout has a song called Brown Wind and Fire. So there's always just that game, and they stumbled upon that, and then they were going to do it. And I heard about it, and I reached out to them. I reached out to Greg, and I was like, hey, I'd love to sing War Pigs if you guys are down. He's like, oh, I don't know. There's so many people involved. So many singers have come forth. I'm really sorry. I don't think we can accommodate you, sir. And then fast forward to I go see, one of those shows at Frank, and then they come up to me and they're like, hey, so do you still want to sing War Pigs? I'm like, yeah, totally. I'll sing War Pigs. And can you do NIB and this one and this one and this one? So a lot of people apparently fell through, and we did that show at Frank, and it just kind of took off. Somebody took a video of it. We were transitioning management. And then next thing you know, the next show was at the Brooklyn Bowl in Brooklyn, 7, 8 wardrobe changes per night, doing all sorts of just go big or go home. So that resonated because the music, we took Black Sabbath music and we combined it with Latin funk. So there's horns and Latin percussion, and it's just an interesting take. And it resonated to the point where we got the attention of Black Sabbath themselves, and Ozzy Osbourne gave us the seal of approval, and we played for him, which is, none of us set out to be in a cover band. And it's not a cover band. It's not a tribute band. It's just a take. It's a take on something, and they appreciated it. And how often do bands that do someone else's music hear from them and they get the old, hey, good job. That was cool.
I'm thinking never.
So that's pretty amazing. Long and short of it, we did it all over the world, and it was just a thing. And then it's just like, okay, we're not supposed to be just a cover band. So we got to put that to rest.
That's a big decision to take something that is clearly so popular and clearly so everybody wants it, and make a decision as musicians to be like, okay, we did it. This is not what we came here to do.
It was a very conscientious decision, much to the chagrin of a lot of people out. The distinction that Brownout and Brown Sabbath are 2 separate entities. It's the exact same band, but they're 2 different things. So what would start happening is that we'd go out as Brownout, and people would think it was going to be Brown Sabbath.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be good because people sometimes, if they're drinking, they'll get aggressive. I got accosted in a green room once. At some point, you're just going through the motions, and that's when you have to pull the plug and do something else. And then I got absorbed into Brownout proper. So we started collaborating on original music, and that's how I came to be the singer in an instrumental Latin funk band.
I say this about all of our friends, that most of you play multiple instruments. I'm sure it exists elsewhere. I don't know. But I think it's something that is so quintessentially Austin.
It's called There's No Money in This, and We Gotta Eat.
Yep.
Diversify.
Diversify.
Goes back to the juggling thing. You got to diversify. You got to do multiple things if you want to be independent and do what you love.
So I want to talk a little bit, just a tiny bit more about just like the Latin fusion music scene. It's like kind of started with Grupo, then Brown Out. That's just kind of what I remember. What was it like when you first started and versus now?
Well, you have to keep in mind that we're in Texas. So Latin music has existed here for a long time, but it's been more the Tejano scene and some of the Latin soul scene, stuff that was happening in San Antonio or on the east side, conjunto stuff. There's been pockets of Latin music. There was something that happened in the late 90s with a band called Tamer. Tamer was led by a French gypsy by the name of Christian Fernandez, and he came in, they built this crazy, amazing band that everybody in my generation would literally go watch, be in awe of, and get inspired by. I had a band called Gandaya, which started literally at the same time as Grupo. We would share bills all the time. We would play the Empanada Parlor. So Grupo definitely did something in this town. You got to keep in mind the late 90s, the Buena Vista Social Club exploded into the world, and it had a big influence on just general North American culture. Salsa clubs were a thing. Salsa can be intimidating and feel exclusive if you don't know what you're doing. So part of the beauty and what Grupo Fantasma tapped into is they went in and they played cumbia. They had some salsa elements, but cumbia is much more accessible. So it was cumbia with some punk rock in it, and people would come in and they didn't have to couple dance.
Listen, cumbia be having me feeling like I could dance for real. Like,
exactly, because you can.
Because it's so fun.
It's fun. So that had a lot to do with it. You can't undermine the contribution that Grupo had. And there's just been so many other bands. And it's different now because there is a lot more Latin music being played. There's a lot more Latin bands. And there's a lot more acceptance and support of these bands than there was 30 years ago.
So there's more fusion happening and you know,
yes,
collaboration happening.
Absolutely. There's a ton of bands. And the thing about Austin is that it's still such a community between musicians. Everybody knows each other. It's not competitive in that negative way. It's inclusive, and we're all in it together.
So tell me, where's your favorite place to play in Austin?
Well, that changes. I love playing the Continental Club. I mean, you and I have done the Continental Club.
It's the best.
Moody Theater is I really do enjoy those two places. Seaboys is fun, although I prefer the Continental.
I do too. So what are some spots that you miss playing and also hearing live music in?
The Old Parish, which used to be on 6. I mean, I stopped going because it was on 6 for a while, and 36 is, it is what it is. But that room upstairs, it was all wood. I had some amazing shows there with Gandaya and with lots of other folks. There was something in that room. The sound was amazing, the vibe was amazing, the stage, the sound, shout out to Chris who did the sound. She's great.
So, okay, you are a full-time musician here in Austin. Tell us how that experience has changed over the time that you've been here. Like, what are your biggest challenges now versus what used to be your biggest challenges?
That's a tough question to answer because I'm 30 years in. I did the grind. I did those 6th Street gigs. I used to work 5-6 nights a week on 6th Street. I did all the hustle. And, luckily I've had good experiences, and I like to think that I work hard and I try and conduct myself in the most professional way possible. And it's very challenging. You need to have multiple sources of income. I teach, I do voice work. It's to be exclusively just playing I did it for years, and there's really no money in it. You just do it for the love and for the evolution. I was making it work. Austin was much cheaper then. So Austin used to be an affordable place to live, and that was kind of its purpose. It was an incubator for artists. People were laid back. People were cool. People came here to develop stuff. That Austin is gone. I'm not going to give you an opinion in either direction because change is inevitable, but we live in a different Austin, and that's fine. It all depends on where you're at, what your goals are, and what you need to subside. And at the end of the day, I am a musician, and I am a teacher, and I am a voice talent, and I'm just a human being trying to make it all work.
I'm curious, how did you are the voice on Capital Metro. So I need to know how that happened.
Because I'm fully bilingual. I've been doing voiceover work for a long time. I've done jingles, and it's always been just another thing that I do. And I don't know, 15, 16 years ago, I did a spot for Cap Metro, and I did both English and Spanish, and they liked that. So when the Metro Rail was being built, they needed someone to do both languages. So I'm the voice of the Metro Rail, and that has just extended. I am in the Red Line buses. If you call Cap Metro, I'm the one that's giving, press 1 for, yada, yada, yada. They have been very supportive. I'm very grateful to Cap Metro. They have consistently hired me for stuff for over 15 years.
You also do a lot of private lessons and teach teenagers at music camps here in Austin. So I've taken a couple, 1, 3, I don't know. I've taken some lessons from you. What does that work mean? What does that mean to you?
Teaching is it's very complicated because it's very bittersweet. It can be really frustrating and really rewarding. I taught at the Austin School of Music for well over 15 years, and that's kind of where I honed my skills as a teacher because I'm a self-taught musician. So I would teach rock camp, and then I would be really good at that. I've been in rock bands since I was 14 years old. I know how to make that work. But then they would want to offer me private students, and then I'd be really intimidated. I can't even read music, this and that. And it's just one of those things where there's different kinds of musicians, and I do have a lot of knowledge that I can impart. So I'm always very honest with my students. If a student comes to me looking for very specific things that are not something I can provide, I happily send them somewhere else because they need to be on their journey. So it's challenging and rewarding.
So what can you tell me about the future of musicians here in Austin? Do you think that creatives will be able to survive and thrive in Austin if we keep growing the way we're growing?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. It's definitely an uphill battle. There's so many factors at play. The affordability is huge, but also to your point, I equate it to this. Austin used to be a musician city, a creative city. Austin is no longer that. Austin is a tech city now. So with that shift comes a different group of people with a different set of interests and priorities. Not to mention, life is different. Everybody's got the world at their fingertips. There's 30 million streaming channels with endless things to watch. Going out to see music, it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing, and it's something that's passed on, and you have to kind of foment and plant the seed and keep growing that garden because you love it. So it's a complicated thing. I don't think it will ever go away, but it is challenging and it's mutating, and it is definitely an endangered species. Change is inevitable. I just wish commerce didn't always dictate how fast things go because it moves in directions that are not always we're always ready to move into, but everybody's quick to try and make a buck. So that has some sometimes devastating, results.
What kind of advice do you have for folks who want to be successful?
You have to define success for yourself, because if you let the world define what success is, you're going to be chasing your tail, and you're going to be chasing something that may not even be real and is probably not even attainable. Some people would look at my life and say, he's incredibly successful. Some people would look at my life and say, yeah, whatever.
Fair.
It's all perspective.
So where can people see you or hear you play?
Horizontes is a radio show that airs on KUTX Sundays from 7 to 9 p.m. And you can hear me there, or you can stream any of the shows at KUTX.org. You'll see me out with the Avocados, which is my surf band. People might see me out playing drums with you from time to time, with Brownout. Carrie Rodriguez's Laboratorio, that's one of my favorite series. That's an ongoing Latin music incubator that happens at the State Theater multiple times a year.
It's beautiful.
That's Laboratorio, and it happens at the State Theater, and that's an episode onto itself. So that's kind of where you'll find me. Kind of out and about, not as much as I used to be, but I'm still out there.
You will also hear Alex at the Tacovas on South Congress on September 12th for the Austin in Stereo series.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to do something I very rarely do, which is just do a few acoustic numbers, just like me and a guitar.
Alex, thank you so much for being here and talking to me about your life and your music and your love and all of that good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, bye, Alex.
All right, bye.
Next up, let's walk a mile in Sean Brannigan's boots, brought to you by our launch sponsor, Tacovas. Hello, everyone. It's Nikki, and I'm here with Sean Brannigan, Austin-based writer, performer, and magic maker. Hi, Sean. How are you?
Hi, Nikki. It's good to see you.
Why don't you tell everybody who you are? Who are you?
My name is Sean Brannigan. I have been a writer and a performer at Esther's Follies in Austin, Texas on 6th Street for 26 years, for a good long time. And I also have done a lot of children's theater at Zach Scott Theater. Me and my partner, Jerome Schooler, have performed in the longest running children's show at Zach Scott called Holiday Heroes, where by my estimation, I think we've performed for something like 100,000 children in the Austin area. Yeah. And that's been running for 22 years.
Let's talk about your job. What is your job?
Esther's Follies is the longest running vaudeville theater in America. We're equal parts sketch comedy, magic, and musical parody. So it's a 90-minute show with sketches and tricks ranging from 2 to 5 minutes. So it's a really rapid fire show. We focus a lot on political satire, but not entirely. And the thing that really sets the theater apart is that our upstage wall is a window, a great big plate glass window out onto 6th Street. So we can send actors out there and do things in the window, but also interact with people who are walking by. And top tip, if you want to save a little money, you can just walk by, watch the show for free. Probably shouldn't say that. You'll miss some of the good stuff. They put the curtain down for some of the magic. But if you want a little taste, like you're not sure about it, go watch a little for free, then come inside.
So how did you get into this line of work? Who or what drew you into this?
Well, I went to theater school, which I wouldn't recommend. I had a good time, but I think it's thrown money down a hole. I got out and I wanted to be like an actor, like a real actor. And I think I've since discovered that I'm not terribly good at that. I moved to Austin in 97 and joined an improv troupe. And through that, got an audition at Esther's Follies and have been doing comedy ever since.
You're also a puppet maker? Don't you do puppets too?
I do. I built a lot of puppets for the children's theater I did at Zach Scott. I also built Fragile Rock. Look them up. Fragile Rock, the world's first and best puppet emo band. And Jerome, my partner from Holiday Heroes, and I just started releasing a web series called EIEI Radio. I built all the puppets and then performed them along with Taylor Love, who is a fantastic puppeteer, and Keyshawn Castle, who used to be in Esther's Follies.
Love it. So let's walk a mile in your boots. What do you do in an average day?
We have writers' meeting on Monday where we all get together and pitch ideas. Tuesday and Wednesday, we get together during the day and rehearse new stuff and polish up old stuff. And then we have shows all weekend. One show Thursday, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday. So I spent the day at home today making props and things that we're going to need for today. The other week, my job was making a rocket that looks like a wiener for Elon Musk. So I wouldn't call it work. It's my job, but I wouldn't call it work. Every Monday without fail, my adult son comes over and we roll some dice and play some minis, whether it's Star Wars guys or like D&D guys. So that's one of the highlights of my week.
And so why does your work matter to you?
I think it was Lorne Michaels said that comedy is complaining with charm. I think it's the healthiest way for me to sort of excise all my anxiety and stress and anger and ire, because I don't know about you, but I've spent the last 8 years just scared and angry all the time. And this is the sort of best way to lance that boil. And I think it helps people come together. We have people of all political persuasions come to the show. And I won't say the show isn't left-leaning, but we do our very best to sort of puncture everybody's balloon. And I've had a lot of, very sort of Trumpian Texan people come to the show and laugh just as hard and enjoy it just as hard as the Kamala supporters.
And so I was just about to ask you, why does your work matter to Austin? But you've already answered it.
I mean, laughter is the best medicine. Morphine's a close second. It's important to Austin, too, because the institutions that defined Austin in its heyday are rapidly disappearing. Esther's Follies is opened in 1978.
Wow.
The owners, Shannon Sedgwick and Michael Shelton, at the time owned Liberty Lunch, and they moved to 6th Street, where they had a theater that burned down. And probably about 30 plus years ago, they moved to their current address at 525 East 6th Street at the corner of 6th and Red River. So it's a real Austin institution, and there's been so much rapid change in Austin. It's one of these few remaining kind of Austin-y things that still exists. And I really think it does provide a terrific outlet and a good window into what Austin used to be and what I think it still kind of aspires to be.
Where do you go to relax or have fun?
I like to go to Barton Springs. One of my favorite things is on a hot Thursday right after the show, we're out at 9. Barton Springs is free at 9. Zip over to Barton Springs, walk in there for free, swim a lap, come home, and just sleep like the dead.
Sean, thank you so much for being here. Please check out Esther's Follies to learn more about all of the things. We'll have that link in our show notes. And, so that means you're just a click away. Thank you for listening. And thanks again to Tecovas for sponsoring this interview. Okay. Bye, Sean.
Bye, Nikki. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to our second episode of Austin in Stereo, brought to you by our launch partner, Tecovas. Tecovas knows more than handmade boots and fine Western wear. They've also got an ear for great music. From legends of the past to rising stars on the scene, we all love supporting musicians and music fans right here in our hometown of Austin. You can hear Alex Marrero play at our showcase on September 12th from 5 to 8 p.m. at the Tecovas store on South Congress. I hope I see y'all there. And make sure if you're headed for a good time on the stage or in the crowd, you go in good boots from Tecovas. That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find the links to Alex and Sean's social media in our show notes. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.